Hello, MotoAmerica fans. It's Paul Carruthers back for another week and another episode of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice, episode number 301. We celebrated our 300th last week with Kayla Yakov, and here we are, 3001 with none other than Brandon Paasch. I forgot to introduce Sean up there. He's uh,
Sorry.
he's my partner in crime on the show as he has been forever and hopefully we'll do forever more. Although we're both getting kind of old, we might just, drop dead right in the middle of the show or something. That's why we always have younger guests so they could carry it on for us.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
so Brandon, let's talk about Brandon Posh. From looking at your social media, I get the impression that you don't necessarily have anything for next year. Is that accurate?
Um, I am technically still in negotiations with the Vision Wheel M4 ECSTAR Suzuki team,
Oh, that's
but
good news.
so nothing's confirmed, nothing's denied, but still not sure what I'm doing yet.
And they still have that second seat is still there, so it's not like they filled it, and which would tell you that you're definitely out the
Yeah,
door.
yeah, no. So I guess at Daytona they signed Tyler for the next 2 years for Supersport and Richie for the next 2 years Superbike. So second Superbike spot's open, and I guess there's a Supersport seat maybe open. I don't know, but
What do you think? It's funny because I was thinking about this morning, and I wonder, like, from a team owner standpoint, would a team owner rather you? And I'm not calling out at your team owner. I'm talking about all team owners. Would a team owner rather a guy slow down a little bit and not crash and not get as good of results, or are they do they think it's best that the person goes as hard as they can, and sometimes that ends up being a crash?
um, you know, I think it depends on where that rider's at. Um, at that point in their career or season or whatever, because at the beginning of the year it was, hey, like get to the front, figure it out. If you fall down, you fall down. Then I started falling down a little bit, and then it was, hey, maybe like don't do that quite so often and try and finish some races. But I think it's it's better for the team probably to be on the result sheet at the end of the race, even if it is, fifth, sixth, seventh, whatever it is, instead of a DNF next to your name. So, because I mean, at the end of the day, like some people don't even watch the race; they just look at the result sheet and that's it. So
Right. Yeah, they're
DNF
not.
doesn't say much about the story of your day.
Yeah, they're not digging in and seeing why it was what it was.
Right? Yeah. No, and I think, yeah, I just think it's important to finish the races regardless. But when you're struggling a little bit and you really want to get results, you kind of are willing to step over that line. And towards the end of the year there, I feel like I had some pretty good momentum, had some good pace, and I really wanted to get a result. So for me, it was, let's just see what happens, kind of roll the dice. And, a lot of them were rookie mistakes, but um, this was my first full year in Superbike too. So
I was going to
That's
ask
right.
you what is are the crashes similar in any way? Like, is there something you're doing that you can fix, or are they just random trying hard crashes?
there was a couple, I was pushing pretty hard on the front end on that thing quite a bit. And, most of them was just tucking the front. So that's something that we can fix, through bike setup and my riding style and some little tweaks there. And I think that won't really be an issue as much. But the weird one was like Ohio, but the track was kind of wet and drying. And I just, for whatever reason on that first lap, I had a just a feeling like, hey, you got to go for it now, like get away with those front two guys and go. And just trying to pass those guys, I went onto the damp part of the track and weeded myself up. But sometimes you got to get a little risky. I don't know. I feel like you're never going to get like a cool story without a little bit of risk involved. So,
Well, yeah, and to that point, Brandon, I had a conversation with Jeff Massey, our senior vice president, the other day about he actually asked me a question. I don't know whether you heard this or what the deal was, but he had heard that some riders actually have to kind of not only we were talking about some riders that pay to ride. That's common around the world
yeah.
now. That's an unfortunate thing. But there are some riders that have to pay like almost like a damage budget in the beginning of the year. I know that for a fact. I'm not going to get into asking you about your situation, but I've heard things like $25,000 up front, and if you crash, it goes against that. I've heard that before. I don't know how you deal with that pressure because sometimes in order to find the limit, you have to go over the limit.
Yeah,
And
no,
to go, yeah.
definitely. over the years, like I've definitely had things like that in my contracts in previous years. And if you look back through my career, I've never really crashed a lot, you know?
Nope.
So,
Nope.
um, you definitely, when that's not necessarily, um, I'm not saying that I'm going out there trying to fall down or whatever, but like, when you're not thinking like, oh, this is going to cost me 5, 10 grand to fall down right now, maybe you don't want to do it quite as much as bad, like you're not kind of willing to risk like throwing the thing down the road when you have to pay for it. So you get a little bit of extra confidence when you get put into a situation where um, you don't have to handle any of it. It's just go do your job, go as fast as you possibly can, and get us results. So that takes like the pressure of like, oh, I don't want to fall down, or you're not quite as willing to do it. Um, Not that I want to fall down, but it is a common thing in this whole sport. So
Yeah, not wanting to hurt yourself is a pretty good
yeah.
thing about not wanting to fall down either.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing. Like towards the end of the year, I started to fall down. Repeat like every weekend, and it was almost like some people thought that I'm going out there to like crash the thing. I'm like, dude, no, like I don't want to get hurt. That one at Ohio, I kind of blew my ankle out, and it's still like I still can't run on it. And that was months ago. So crashing sucks. It's not fun. You don't want to do it, but sometimes it's just part of the deal. You have to. You got to find the limit.
I look back and I'll always remember like 14-year-old Brandon Paasch. I think it was at Utah, right? Was that your
Yeah.
first one?
Yep.
And you got on the podium and you were cool and you're a little bit of a smart ass. And I could tell you kind of had that going for you, in addition to the fact that you were really fast and really good. And here we are now. You're only what, 23?
Yep.
23 years old. But I could actually say that I hate to say this, but like I've expected more, and I'm sure
Yeah.
you expected more, and I just don't know why we haven't gotten it yet.
Yeah, it's this whole Super Bowl. I mean, if you look back like from the beginning, so my first full year was 2016, and then didn't do another full year in MotoAmerica till I don't know 2020 in
That's
Supersport,
right.
and then missed another year. Came back in 22 on the Altus bike, and then missed half the year in 23. So this was really only my fourth full season of MotoAmerica racing um, in my whole career, and I just think that like there's a lot of learning and growing that I have to do to be at the front of Superbike. Yes, I'm talented and I work hard and I'm fit and all those things, but it's such a big like puzzle to put together to be, I'm racing Bobier, Gagne, like all these guys that are like pretty legit, so to be able to beat them guys, it's not easy. And it takes everything being put in place at the right time. And from fitness to bike setup to, your just overall bike feel, just riding the bike and being comfortable on the limit like that. And it's not easy to be able to hold a 1000 on the limit for 40-minute race or whatever. It's definitely a different skill. Super sport's a lot easier in that aspect than even super stock 1000 because the race is shorter. So um, yeah, it's just fine tuning all those little things and being able to keep the bike fast at the beginning of the race to the end of the race, not fast in the beginning, slow at the end, or slow in the beginning, fast at the end. Like everything has to come together, and it's been difficult for me, learning the ropes up in the big class and trying to figure out how to dial everything in. So
Is it mainly an electronics thing?
yeah, the electronics are quite difficult to really get set up for you as an individual because like I can go ride Richie's settings and like yeah, I can go fast, but I'm not as comfortable as I am, with the things that I like. So um it's hard too because everybody rides the bike a little different, and I'm also just a different guy in general. I'm bigger. I have a different
Yeah.
style of riding than like Jake Lewis, who was big that rode the bike. So it's like finding your own lane is tricky, at the beginning. And I think we're starting to figure that out. We're moving forward. So
Do you have
Yeah.
it? Do you have that sweet spot yet?
there was a couple times this year where I rode the bike and I was like, man, this thing feels like mine. And then there was a few days where it didn't quite feel as connected. So I think it's still, I'm just trying to narrow down that, like, find that point, that edge where everything is working, and I can ride it on the limit and not feel like I'm going to be on my head, you know. So it's like just finding that balance has been tricky, and it comes and goes. It's like certain tracks I've been performing way better than others, so it's like confusing on how to figure everything out, But
Yeah. Hey, so Brandon, I'm going to campaign for Brandon Paasch right now. Because I have also, by the way, heard that you were still in the running for going back to Vision Wheel M4 ECSTAR Suzuki. So, for sure, I know that you're part of that mix. But I also want to say, you pointed one thing out. You've only had 4 years in MotoAmerica. The other thing, and I know you're never going to make excuses about this, but you had that crazy spinal issue. You broke your
Yeah.
back. Is that okay now?
Um, yeah, I mean it's healed, but dude, my back still hurts every day.
Of
I
course,
wake
of
up in the morning
course.
just with my back's sore 24/7, like, um, and that'll probably never go away, right? So, that's just another thing that I've had to learn how to deal with in the past year and a half, 2 years since I did that. Definitely makes training a little bit more difficult, and the longer races, like this year was my first Daytona 200 after I broke my back, and there was no red flags, no rest, nothing. I finished that race and I was smoked. Like,
Yeah.
dude, my back, I couldn't stand up. I was like hobbling back to the truck, like, dude, this is gnarly. And I mean, yeah, coming back from injuries like that is difficult and it takes time. And unfortunately, we don't have time. We got to kind of figure it out now.
Well, yeah, and the other part of it too I want to mention is I brought that up only because I knew it was kind of a chronic thing that you're dealing with, and I'm not making an excuse again for it. But the other thing about it this year, your setup obviously is quite different than Richie's. That's understandable because of you look at the two of you guys. The other part of it, it had to be a little bit of a factor that Richie was, injured and out for a while, so you had a different guy, and you had different guys. Didn't you have two different team
Yeah.
riders? Yeah. So
Um,
that's not easy
yeah, we
either.
had Chavi and Richie all
That's
year.
right.
So
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
was difficult too because, like, with Richie, we're definitely more friends also away from the team. Like, we still talk to each other outside of the track and stuff. And we've worked together in the past in Supersport, sorry.
That's all right.
So we were teammates in Supersport for a weekend. And I've spent time with Richie, like training out in California, and we've hung out a little bit. And when we work together on the Superbike, he'll let me go out with him, or if I'm stronger on that day, he'll come out with me, behind me. And we just kind of help each other and give each other little bits of like what we're doing on the track and where we can both improve. So working with Richie is good. And then Chavi comes in. He's not like, he was friendly to me, right? But he's not Richie, you know.
Right.
We're
Right.
not, we don't have that same relationship. So, he has a better day than me. It's more of him working for himself, you know. So um, it definitely made it a little bit more difficult to kind of find that pace earlier in the season and feeling more like I was doing it on my own, and then when you get your teammate back, that's like your buddy, it helps everybody. So
Yeah.
It's also got to be helpful. I mean, Richie goes really well, and that's great that you guys get along and you work well together. But it's also pretty good that a guy like Xavi comes in and doesn't kick everybody's butt,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
that would have been, that's obviously you're not talking about having an opportunity to ride that bike next year. That opportunity would be gone.
yeah, yeah. No, and I think that's the thing is like having somebody of Chavi's caliber come in, really helped me out with, my confidence because I know I'm getting a lot out of the bike and I know I'm riding really well at the moment. So for me, that was like a confidence boost. Like, hey, this guy just came in. He won the Supersport Championship last year. He's raced in every Superbike championship in the world. He's been on the podium pretty much everywhere, and he's not smoking me. And like half the races, I'm beating him. So like this is a good sign. At least I'm riding well, and I know I'm putting in the work, and it's working for the situation that I'm in. So um, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Now you started the season. I'm looking at the points. Zeros in the first two races.
Yeah.
I can't remember, were those crashes or not?
So yeah, I crashed out of the first race. I was kind of off pace all weekend in Atlanta, and for whatever reason, that first race, I kind of was like, do whatever you got to do to stay on that group. And like 2 laps in, I just tucked the front in 10B. Just trying. I was right on the back of Richie, and the whole group was right there. It was like one big pack. It was only lap two, and yeah, I just tucked the front in the first race, and then the second race we had a mechanical, and I fell down again. So
So that's
Yeah.
rough. I mean, that's you start a season 0, 2 zeros,
yeah,
and it's not. I mean, I don't think people can understand like if that would have been different. If you started with 2 5th places or 2 6th places,
yeah,
suddenly the momentum's on your side and you roll
yeah,
from there. But instead, you're up to your neck in shit and
yeah.
trying to
And
dig out of it for the next race.
especially being a rookie and coming out of round one with 2 zeros, and you're like honestly questioning yourself. You're like, damn, like what did I just sign up for? I don't know where I went wrong. I was fast at the test that we did the day before the weekend. I like felt good, and then went there and had a terrible performance. I was like, man, this is not good. And then I went from there. The next weekend, I was riding at NJMP and crashed again on my first lap of the day. And I was just like, dude, I wasn't thinking about like being done racing, but I was just like, man, this is rough right now. Like,
Mm.
and I think a lot of people overlook that because the confidence side of riding, like you have to have that confidence, otherwise you're never going to go fast. So
Yeah, and I think I can say this. I think Paul would say it too. That bike seems to be notoriously difficult to ride. I mean, Tony had issues with it, and Tony was a Yoshimura Suzuki champion. I mean, when he got on that bike, and I don't know what the reason for it is. It's just it's not easy to get on and do stuff with. And as we saw with Xavi, it was the same thing. Obviously, it was your first season on that bike, even though you raced in the past in Stock 1000. That Stock 1000 bike was a completely different bike than the Superbike, wasn't it?
yeah. Oh yeah. No, the super stock bike, there's so many differences between the swing arm and the linkage and the pivots and the triple clamps and the forks and the brakes and the electronics. Like everything about it's different. Yeah, it starts as the same thing. It's kind of more or less got the same geometry, but it's way different. Like just how to ride the bike's a lot different. And I think for me, it was a easier transition to go from the stock bike to that, just because I've had previous experience with like the Moto2 bikes in Spain a little bit and the Moto3 bikes, and the chassis on those things are so stiff that when you kind of get back to that with the super bike with the stiff swing arm and the stiff setup, like it made it easier for me to transition to that than probably maybe some other people. I don't know, but just right away the thing like turned better and like just felt better to me than the stock bike. So
So part of my campaigning again for you, the other part I know about you, Brandon, and I see it during the year. Again, 4 years, I felt like you had a decent season. I mean, there were some issues, but one of the things you do, there's a lot of intangibles with you as a person and also on that team that I've seen. Obviously, your social media prowess, you're well spoken, you're always great to interview. And heck, when that team needed something, when they needed the bikes downtown in Salinas, you put them in, what was it, your van or
yeah,
somebody's
my
van?
sprinter van. I drove across the country this year. I drove to all the races, and yeah, Salinas. We loaded them up in my van and drove them downtown for bike night. We did the same thing at Daytona actually too. I had my Daytona 200 bike in the back of my van, and we were supposed to bring it to a TV interview, and I actually wound up calling
Yeah.
saying like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I can't even show up because somebody robbed my storage unit." So I was like dealing with
Right.
that with the Daytona 200 bike I was racing in the back of my van, dealing with like these people that robbed my storage unit. I was like, dude, this is actually insane.
That's the thing. And I mean, I know it's about winning races. I totally get that. But I mean, there is also something to be said about being a good teammate, a good team player, somebody that's going to be willing to do stuff. And from our point of view, helping us too. And every time you work with us on something, if it's a media or whatever, obviously it helps their, Team Hammer's brands, their sponsors, your own sponsors. Well, you get it, you understand it, and you've understood it since the beginning of your racing. So I think a big part of that. I mean, let's get past that rookie season and see what happens next for you. I mean, there's going to be a jump, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the year doesn't look so great, but I think it's only because, the second half of last season when I jumped in after I broke my back, I had actually like some pretty good results right out of the
Hmm.
gate and didn't fall down at all. Well, I think I fell once or something last year, but I jumped out of the gate like kind of swinging and did really well. And then this year we started slow and then built on it all year. So I think it was kind of the expectations were a bit higher than what I had delivered at the beginning of the year. And yeah, it was just for me, it's just growing pains, just being a full on rookie in the season in the series and
Right.
trying to get everything dialed in and figure out which direction that I want to go. Because last year I was also very in my actual, first couple races, we didn't really change anything with the bike. It was just, hey, go ride the thing and get comfortable on it. So then once we actually come to start the full season, it's like, okay, now we got to dial this thing in a little bit more for you. And you kind of not get lost in it, but you got to try certain things and know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So we obviously had to go the wrong way to go the right way. Sometimes you get lucky, you go the right way in the first place, but it's not
Right.
every time. So, yeah, I think it was just a lot of learning. And now we know for next year, where where I like the bike and where I don't like the bike, and what areas we can improve and where we're okay, So
Yeah,
something to build off of.
it seemed like those early races you had, the results were so good. I can't remember. Did you start at Laguna?
Yeah, Laguna, I finished fifth in that first race. Like, I mean, a couple guys fell down, but I was
Right.
still in the mix, and
Right. So
fifth.
at
So
that point, I think it's like you don't know enough to hurt yourself in the
yeah,
setup, right? So
yeah,
it's like a super sport bike where you really can just go ride it. And I think that's what you were doing. And
yeah.
then as you get smarter and you start changing things, sometimes you go
Sometimes you go
backwards.
the wrong way. Yeah, and like, so we went from Laguna. I think the next one might have been Brainerd, and I qualified fourth or fifth at Brainerd my second weekend, and then finished I think fourth in the one race, and I was only like 8 seconds off the win, 4 seconds off the podium or something, and everybody was like, "All right, like
Right.
we're we're in the hunt here," and then we just keep moving along, going pretty steady in the top five for the those last four races there, and then yeah, just started this year thinking like, all right, we're good. We're going to be in the top five. Let's try and make some changes. And then you kind of go on this like road back and forth trying to figure out what works. But that's part of the process.
Do you trust the bike? One thing I always ask with superbike riders is that you have to get on there and twist the throttle and trust that those electronics aren't going to toss you to the moon or whatever. It's going to control it. You can whack the throttle open and it'll do what it's supposed to do. Do you trust that?
Yeah, I mean that was definitely a bit of a transition, but for me, like I ride my Super Stock 1000 that I have sitting over there. I ride that at track days and stuff, and that thing has no electronics. Like it's just I run it TC off and no kind of slide control or wheelie control or none of that stuff. And I think that's been good for me too, because like I realized okay the limit's a lot farther than you'd think. So when the bike is acting up a little bit, I'm a little bit more willing to ride in that zone just because I do it more often on my own bike. And yeah, you definitely have to have the confidence in the electronics. It's so hard to build that trust with it, but after a few rounds on that thing, I started to realize, okay, the TC actually does work pretty good. You can kind of ride in it, and it's not just going to throw you to the moon. But it took some transitioning for sure.
Mhm. Yeah.
So how are you committed to Superbike at this point? And let's pretend for a minute that you don't get the second Vision wheel, the M4 Suzuki ride. What are you against going to another class at this point? You feel like you're a Superbike racer
No,
and that's where you need to be?
I know I can be competitive in Superbike. I know it, like I believe it, and that's obviously where I want to be. That's my first goal is to stay in Superbike, but I can't help but look at these guys in super sport right now and super stock and think that, I could go to either one of those classes, fight for a championship. And at the end of the day, that's what kind of pays the bills is race results. So if I have to step down and that's my option, or if something comes available in super stock or super sport or even baggers, I'm in. I just want to go racing. And if I can stay on track and keep racing, that's happy days for me. So
I can kind of see you on a bagger.
yeah, I mean, hey,
Yeah.
if the right opportunity was there, I'm in. I'm in. I think, I think that class, obviously the level's pretty high, but I think I can go in there and honestly do pretty well. So
Yeah, I mean you got the size for that bike for sure. I mean that's good. Yeah, it's weird this year, Brandon. I mean, you think about the riders that are, from what we understand, looking for rides. It's you, it's Bobby Fong, it's Cam Peterson, it's Matthew Skoltz. There are several riders. And it's a little bit musical chairs. There's not a lot of riders going around. We hear lately that Scott Redding wants in, but it's like, hey, let's take care of our own riders before we get somebody
yeah,
from, World Superbike or British Superbike or whatever. So I know it's an issue. It's tough to have that to deal with. And I know Matthew Skoltz made it pretty clear this year. He wants back in Superbike like Matt. I haven't heard that he's found stuff yet, and he's even maybe considering British Superbike. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to take anything away from your efforts to do something in MotoAmerica, but you are pretty well connected in England. We would hate to see you not in this paddock, but is that an option for you? Are you considering that at all?
yeah. I've been thinking about it a lot. I went over to the last BSB round of the year, talked to a few people. Seems like there might be a couple doors open, but um, for me, like it's got to be the right deal. I
Right,
don't want to go
right.
over there and not be on really competitive equipment. I want to go over and have a legit chance at winning. And obviously in the British Superbike class, that's pretty hard to do. Those guys are pretty in tune with all those tracks over there and the bikes and how everything works. So it's not going to be easy to jump into another series like that. But obviously, I know the tracks, so that's one thing. You don't have to learn the tracks. It's just figuring out how to ride those bikes on those tracks is seems like a bit of a mission because everybody is in such tight groups and the times are really competitive there. And here this year we had 10, 11 guys that could be at the front. Over there, there's the top 25 are within second and a half in qualifying. It's kind of crazy. So um,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
and
know.
I
I'm thinking about it.
and I didn't mention JD Beach as well. So yeah, it's a lot of riders that are really quality guys. But like I said, I have heard that you're being considered at Vision Wheel. So shout out to CU and JU to make that
Yeah.
right because it's got to be beyond a junior. Sorry, what do they call it? A rookie year.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
I really hope that that everything works out, and I think they also can see too, that it's rookie, it's my rookie year. I'm
yep.
young. I'm the youngest guy that's without a ride, and hopefully I'll be around the longest out of everybody that's looking for a superbike ride right now. So um, I'd like to stay in the paddock and stay moving forward, get to the front of superbike, and start getting on the podium, win some races. That's always been the goal, and I think a couple more years under my belt, we can be fighting for a championship. So
I want to ask you about something that's kind of a tough subject, Brandon, but I'm going to do it. It's the off season, so let's talk about this a little bit. So you more as much as anybody had to suffer through that tragedy with Scott Briotti a couple of years ago, and we all felt the same way. And now then we have this bizarre situation that Ben Fox passed away. And you were the last one to work with him. Ben was always an enigma to me. I could never get a smile out of him, and as much as I tried. And I read about you saying you guys would joke around and stuff. And I know he did that. I know he would have fun, but sometimes he was a little difficult for me to get to know very well. And then when somebody like that passes, you're like, well, that's I've never felt like I ever broke through or got anywhere with him. But you got two things. You guys were close. You guys had a good relationship and you don't have him anymore anyway. So if you go back to Vision Wheel, they need a guy for you, obviously. Can you talk about the impact that has had on you, and tell us a little bit about what you knew about Ben Fox?
yeah, I mean the Ben thing is honestly crazy. Like, um, it's just kind of weird, because it was so out of nowhere and just like a random, shitty incident that happened. And yeah, I mean, me and Ben have been working together now. This was our first full year, but last year we worked together the second half of the year. And then actually in 2017, my first test with the M4 team in Supersport, Ben was my crew chief then as well. And so I've known Ben for a while. And I think the only reason that I really got him to be like laughing and stuff all the time is because I'm such a dork and like I'm just running around like poking people all the time and like making fun of people and kind of just messing around and like I'm serious, when I need to be serious, but the rest of the time when I'm at the track, like I'm just making fun of the people in the team and like having fun and I'll just be poking Ben all the time until he would like start laughing a little bit just because I know he's always so serious and I like to see if I can break people with that. So um, yeah, Ben was pretty funny. Like, especially, you go out to dinner with him and he's got some stories. So, um, yeah, just a cool dude. Super terrible incident, and
Yeah.
kind of shitty for me, like you said, not being able to build with Ben next year on the Superbike team. And I think we really started finding some direction. So it's kind of a shame to not be able to run it back and see what would have happened. But for me, yeah, that's in the past year, I've lost Ben and then Eric Gray, who was my crew chief at Altus the last
Yes, Eric Gray. You're right.
full
Yes.
season.
Yes.
Michelle, obviously from
Yep.
Yeah.
TOBT, and then a team owner from Crespo Racing was the first team that took me on in BSB.
Wow.
All within the past year, which is crazy. Two team owners and two crew chiefs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tough. So and you're right, Michelle. And also who was the other one you mentioned? I'm sorry. Oh, Eric Gray. My gosh,
Yeah,
he was such a huge part, and that team is still feeling the effects of that. Clearly, I mean, I think George will tell you that. George Nasani will say that to you or anybody. So Daytona. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's honestly Daytona 200 and Loudon Classic are two races that I do not want to miss next year, regardless of anything else I have going on. I don't want to miss those races. It's the only two races that have big payouts, to make a little bit of money, make a salary, and it's the two oldest races, most prestigious races in America. So, being able to win those is cool for me. It's good for me to put on my resume. I've had two Daytona 200 wins already, and I want to break the record of five. So, um, luckily, I'm still pretty young, and I feel like I can still do it. So,
Speaking of that record, and speaking of Daytona and Mr. Daytona, who's Scott Russell, who holds that record, when he used to walk into the speedway, he walked in there with an air of like, this is my place. It's almost like he knew if things didn't go badly, he was going to win. And
yeah,
I kind of get that sense from you when you walk into that place compared to when I see you at Mid Ohio or any place else.
yeah,
It's like a different Brandon Paasch that shows up at Daytona, and I think it's a confidence thing.
yeah, yeah. No, I definitely. I just walk into that place and just not act like I own the place, but walk around with that confidence and that. Every year I've been there, I've been in contention to win the race since the very first time. I think my first one was 2019, maybe. And 5 laps to go, I was in second, right behind Bobby Fong, and they red flagged it, restarted, finished fifth. Come back the next year, didn't race because of COVID. Come back the next year, won it. Next year, won it. The next year, finished second, but got a penalty for speed in the pit lane. And then this past year, ran out of fuel. So, but I was leading the race before I ran out of fuel.
Yeah, it's
not
a good
not because I
run.
should have been, but because I didn't pit in. So,
Right. So is it necessitate being on a team that does those races, or is it one of those things where sometimes you're on a team and they let you do that race regardless if
yeah,
they
I
don't do
mean, in previous years, up until I had this M4 deal, I've kind of rode for different teams throughout the year, right? So like I would do TOBC for Daytona and then Altus for the main season, and then year before that TOBC for Daytona, and then the Factory Triumph team in BSB. Year before that TSE, and then another team for the rest of the season. So like I usually it's usually a one-off thing for me. It's not usually with my main team, but I've also never ridden for a factory team kind of deal. So now that I am with that team, it's a lot more complicated to make all those extra races work and mix into the schedule. But yeah, I'd say if I stay with M4, I'll be doing it on a Suzuki, obviously. Um, I don't know what that looks like or how they would plan on running it, but I'd be on a Suzuki. And if I don't ride for M4, who knows what I'll be on? I'll be on something though. I'm not going to miss it. So
and that Suzuki's good enough to win that race.
yeah, no, I believe we could have won the race last year. Had some things went differently throughout the weekend, and we started in a better way. I think we definitely could have been a lot more competitive. I think the bike can do it. I mean, Richie's almost won it on that thing a couple times now. So
Yes. Yeah. Well, and the other part of it too is for both those things with you with Daytona and also with Loudon, it's cool that the Vision Wheel M4 ECSTAR Suzuki team has shown a commitment to not only Daytona, but also they've been at the Loudon
yeah,
Classic. So if they want you to ride, or if you want to ride there, they'll do it, I'm sure.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's another
yeah.
reason for you to be around.
It's like also with the Loudon thing, I've only done it once, and it was my first race back after I broke my back last year, and we finished fourth and almost won the race on a bike that we built the week of the race. And like
Yeah.
after that, now I've been like, man, I want to go back. I want to win that race just to say I've done it. So um, that's one that I'm really looking forward to. I think I can do really well there. It's a super tight, gnarly track, and that's just what I ride well at. So
Okay,
I was
so
kind of
go ahead, Sean.
I was kind of surprised. I was just going to ask this. I was kind of surprised you weren't at the Biketoberfest with the team. I mean, the fact that Richie was there and Tyler was there as well, and also maybe the vintage event at Barber, because I think M4 was there too. I mean, they've been going to a few things, and I'm like, that's one of the things that's made me wonder about you and next year, and what's happening with you. But I'm like, geez, you're around. You should be with those
yeah,
guys too, right?
yeah, the barber thing, I think they only had Tyler there.
You're
I
right.
wanted to do it,
Yes.
but I was actually with RST in England, so it's a team sponsor, and I went over there to do some work for them and missed the barber thing, but I wasn't I don't think I was going to that regardless. And then the Daytona deal, I wanted to go do this AMA Supermoto race out in Arizona.
Yes,
It was
yes.
the same weekend, and I pretty much kind of called them and I was like, "Hey, can I go do it?" And Jay was like, "Yeah, I guess if you really want to do it." And I just took that as, "Yep, go do it." So I didn't need to hear any more than that. I just went and did that race, and yeah, um, probably should have been at Daytona, but I really wanted to go race. It's just what I like to do is race, and any chance there's an opportunity for me to go and have that adrenaline dump of starting a race or whatever, regardless who's there. I just love that feeling. So um, yeah, had to do it. Had to go race.
And it seems like when you're not racing, everything in your life still revolves around riding motorcycles. It's like
Yeah,
I know you're pretty visible, obviously, on social media, so we see more than we do with other people. But it seems like if you're not training, you're doing supermoto or you're doing something where you're riding a motorcycle.
yeah, yeah,
Is that? I mean, you obviously just love riding motorcycles.
yeah. That's like if I could pick one thing to do until I can't do it anymore, it's ride motorcycles. So, um, like you said, if I'm not training to race my motorcycle or doing something on my laptop towards racing motorcycles, I'm out actually riding. And I'd like to say, most weeks I'll ride 4 or 5 days a week, whether it's in the woods because we have a little woods loop at my house, or from my door we can ride to the Pine Barrens. So we just go ride trails all day, or we go to the supermoto track or whatever. I'm always looking for opportunity to ride.
Hmm.
You know, we have a lot of very hardworking people in our MotoAmerica paddock. I mean, our officials and our crew people and hell, even Paul and me. But there's one guy who is probably one of the hardest working, and I'm going to shout out to him because he's a crazy person, in Zach Eaton. And you guys are like friends. How did that come about? And I know he's always around. I mean, every time you turn around, he's like there
There,
somehow. I don't know
yeah.
how he does it, but it's cool that you guys have kind of struck up a friendship, and it's you kind of get together, don't you, a little bit?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
helps with air fence.
yeah, yeah.
Well, there's that
I
too. Yes.
Yeah, I've been doing air fence with him, but I think I met him 2022 at VIR when I was racing the Altus bike, and Corey Texter was there working for some reason with MotoAmerica, and he came up to me and he was like, "Dude, you got to meet this guy Zach. He's a riot." And I like just met him in passing, and I was like, "Oh, what's up, dude?" And, like just barely talked to him. And like 3 weeks later, we were somewhere, and he like came over to me and just started bullshitting, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's pretty cool." Like, and then we just started hanging out, and I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, we've been hanging out quite a bit, and dude does work hard.
Oh my gosh, he's
100%.
everywhere. Yeah. We don't know how he does it. And he's good friends with our guy, Tucker Scott, who I know you
Yep.
know. And so it's just kind of funny how Zach finds his way around pretty well. And I just think it's cool that you guys hit it off. And I could see that. I could definitely see that. You're kind of similar in your personalities a little bit. Kind
Yeah.
of just let what happens happen and go from there. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, we're both just kind of living. So
Right.
whatever
Right.
happens, happens. We're just hanging out, having a good time, enjoy life because it's only so long. So
It's
might as well have a
true.
good one.
Brandon, I've got a proposition for you, and I haven't talked to this team yet, but I'm going to throw this out there. And this is aside from the Vision Wheel M4 ECSTAR Suzuki team. This is Super Sport, which you said you'd do, and you're a New Jersey guy. So there's a good friend of yours that I think is going to be all in this coming year in Super Sport on a Ducati V2. His dad thinks the world of you. You guys are the Jersey boys. How about you get on a rodeo racing V2 and you guys be teammates in racing Supersport this year, huh?
Yeah,
Good.
I don't mind that idea. Actually, I've had a couple conversations about it already. So if that were to need to happen, we might be able to put something together there. I think that would be pretty cool. Me and baby Gus, teammates, would be pretty sweet. But I don't know if I could put up with him for a year.
Yeah,
Jesus.
or his dad. Kevin's a handful to deal
Poor
with. Like,
Kev, dude. I don't know if Kev could put up with me, honestly. I'd feel bad. Yeah, he puts up with enough of my shit most of the time anyways, because I'm always hanging out with Gus too. He lives an hour
right.
from my house, and we've been working together doing our supermoto school, and um making he's got like a whole setup at his shop. He does like graphic design and graphics and shirts and all kinds of stuff. So we've been over there working on shirts and doing little projects and stuff. So we're always together, and I think it would be a pretty seamless transition for me, because it's just people that I enjoy being around, and we kind of think the same. We race motorcycles and just have fun. So could work out pretty good.
What's going on with Anthony Mazziato these days?
Oh, Jesus. Maz is he's working full time now. So yeah, he's just busy working.
Every time he races, he's good though, Brandon.
Yeah,
I mean, he does a good job.
I honestly, I don't know too many people like him that like will take years off and just come back and be exactly where he was when he left. Like,
Right.
and it's crazy too, because like the talent level changed, from when he stopped the first time, and then when he came back to Supersport and he was like top 5 right out of the gate, it was like, all right, that's pretty cool. Like you're back, and then Twins Cup for a full year, almost won the championship, and like dude can ride pretty good. He's a funny individual.
Yeah, he's different. He's different. I bring him up because we had a meeting the other day, and Richard Varner actually mentioned him as the rider that rode up the side of the wall at Daytona.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's always going to be known for that. So, but no, it's cool, and it's great that you guys have that camaraderie in that part of the country. But listen, I have never talked to Kevin Rodeo about that plan. I know about Gus and his plans to go super sport full time, but I thought you need a teammate sometimes, and what better way to make it happen? Easy for me to say because Ducati V2s, they just grow on trees everywhere, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's a whole other whole other ordeal that comes with that, and that's getting another bike and getting set up for that. But
right.
As far as like for Gus, that'd be a good thing for Gus to have somebody that's at my level and experience wise, for him to kind of learn from me would be good for him. So
yeah, for sure,
and it'd keep me on the track, keep me racing. So I think it'd be good for everybody, just local boys racing. But
so you got some options. You got options, and you have some personal sponsors that have been pretty loyal to you for a while, Brandon. I think you still have most of them, don't you? I mean, you do some stuff with that Luxstar. Sorry, I said it backwards.
Yeah, Luxstar. I got a whole group of people that have been kind of supporting me on and off for years now, and we're always kind of coming up with new ways to make the deals work for everybody. And there's definitely a good group of people behind me that want to see me do well and want to see me keep racing. So I'm sure if it came down to it, I'm sure we'd be able to put something together. But like I was saying, my first goal is to stay in Superbike and just keep chasing that dream. I want to be a Superbike race winner and Superbike champ. So got to kind of stay in the class to make that happen.
Well, let's hope for that. I'm sure John and Chris will make the right decision here going forward, and we'll have you back next year. But what do I know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I think it's a good idea for them to keep me, to be honest with you. Like I was saying before, I'm the youngest guy in the class other than Sean. I'm hungry. I can still get results. There's something to grow on. And I don't know, when's the last time that Suzuki's been on the front row of a Superbike race?
Yeah.
Been a while. So
yeah.
My last ever Superbike race, I started on the front row, which is kind of cool for me.
Yeah.
Only front row, and it was my last race. And if I don't come back, at least I have that. It's like I was at the front the last time I raced one. So
yeah.
All right. You got any more, Sean?
No, we wish you well though, Brandon. I mean, you're always great to have on. Really love to talk to you. And, I'm sure we'll talk to you during the off season too. Heck, we may get you to do some stuff with Daytona again this year, right, Paul? I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm always down to do that stuff. I love it. And Frank over at Daytona seems to like me for whatever reason. So I think the invite's pretty open to keep coming back. So
yeah, we can make that happen.
We found out that Frank is from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he's a Northeast kind of guy, so he understands.
That's probably why we get along.
Yeah, he relates to you. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. No, that's sweet. They just put in a new go-kart track over there, so I'm trying to go check that out.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
See if they'll let me out there on the supermoto bikes.
That's cool. Yeah, keep that training. Send us some of those videos. We love to show that stuff. So definitely send us stuff. Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff. I've been filming a lot recently, and planning on doing a lot more this off season. So
good.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of content for everybody.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Thank you for joining us, Brandon, and we'll see you here soon. Keep in touch.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye, Sean.
See ya, Paul.